Welcome back, and welcome back, my angels. In this video, we'll be covering intriguing legends, ones that tie into Christmas and spirituality both, but to many others, they may not have made the connections. Imagine the hush of a snow-blanketed alpine village on a frost-bitten December eve. Children huddled by the hearth, eyes wide with a mixture of glee and dread, as the distant toll of cowbells echoes like a sinner's dirge. It's not the sleigh bells of Santa that stir in the air, it's the rattle of chains, the snap of twigs, and the growl of a beast born from nightmares. It's Krampus, the horned beast, the Yuletide's unrelenting judge, who slinks from the shadows to claim the souls of the unrepentant. Half devil, half wild god, he's the forgotten fury of winter, a legend that claws its way through centuries. Well, terrifying. There is an underlying truth, not to the beast, that is, although there are spiritual beings in the spirit world that resemble Krampus, but there's a deeper meaning to it. Could you imagine, though, being taught as a child that there was such a creature coming for you like Krampus? I mean, have you seen him? Have you seen some of the movies even out there about him? I've spent my time teaching my children the horrible histories and truths behind a lot of things in religion and politics, both, as well as the symbolism and hidden meanings in things in regular life. And that includes stories of Santa Claus and Krampus. I do have to say, though, the more awake you become, it's hard to continue in this world knowing the knowledge that you do, because it takes away from the fun or innocence in a lot of things that you've probably been brought up believing, especially with the magic in it. From Noah's Ark to Santa Claus, these stories touched the lives of many children who believed that they were real. However, there were underlying truths to them, not in the way that most people thought, though. But that's what I'm here for. I have exposed deeper hidden truths so that people can understand the things that no one else will teach them. And that includes things involving Christmas and religion. On a spiritual level, St. Nicholas and the Beast of Krampus merely just symbolize dark and night, good and evil. It is just another example of the yin-yang, that everything exists on earth in duality, or at least for the unenlightened it does. And yes, even in the season of lights, darkness demands its due. But can anyone really see how deep this really goes? For winter itself, it's the darkest part of the year, so they balance it out with a saint who comes and brings gifts, lighting up the season with a variety of colored lights representing the daytime. But because it's equally dark during winter, they balance the saint and his good deeds of gift giving by adding just another dark figure to the darkest time of the year. And so it's very similar to how Christians say that good people will go to heaven, but the bad people will go to hell. At Christmas time, the good children get gifts, while the bad ones get punishment by terrifying Krampus. Yet the truth behind that, during winter, death overpowers life and night overpowers day. This means that winter overpowers darkness, and that is true. In a past video, I covered a little bit about that and how I personally felt, how there were some things that were odd about Christmas, and then last year I made a video going into the history deeper in regards to the spiritual meaning of the holiday itself. But this year, I wanted to do something a little bit different and go beyond the veil just a little more by looking at some of the darker figures that are interlaced into a holiday that's meant to be all about cheer and joy on the surface, but actually about celebrating darkness and things that are done in it. So why do these figures make their appearances? Why do they exist? What does it really all mean? These are questions that I hope this video is going to answer, as I'm sure you'll probably be wondering them as well too. There are a lot of truths to be uncovered regarding holidays, and especially their origins. Since childhood, I've celebrated the seasons a lot differently from what other people do because I always had this deeper knowledge and understanding about earthly affairs. Not everything is what it seems or what it's projected to be, and that includes many things. One example especially is the Bible, because even though it's full of knowledge and divine prophecy, there are a lot of things hidden inside of it, misunderstood. Then there are the holidays as well as religious figures. There are some religions based on the belief of Jesus that don't celebrate Christmas, especially with it being his birth, believe it or not. When I was a little girl, I knew many Jehovah's Witnesses who didn't celebrate the holidays, including Christmas. Yet it was supposed to be the birthday of Christ. They must have known some of the origins while going into them maybe not as deeply as they should have. They merely just said holidays are pagan. For me, my family was raised very traditional, growing up in New Jersey and taking part in what many thought, to believe was the American dream. This was meant to be keeping up with the Joneses. And if people were going to go out and start decorating their houses and chopping down a Christmas tree, then everybody else was doing it. I believe that people go along with holidays in order to have something to look forward to bring something into life, that brings a great deal of happiness through a year of hardship. People have to slave drive themselves working for another person's idea or dream just to survive. It doesn't matter where. If you're working for Walmart, then you're helping the founders of Walmart achieve their goals. If you're working as a nurse and you're supporting the hospital, then you're helping the doctors support their dreams in the hospital. Those aren't bad jobs, especially nursing, since it pays well and you are helping people, if you get my drift, but people are slaving for someone else's dream in the long run. Most people are on their feet or behind a desk working hard most of the days of their life just to make ends meet. And so holidays are a great way to get together with your loved ones and partake in doing whatever makes you feel good for the moment to bring a little joy. So many people, they look forward to it, and I know that they do, and I see many people in my neighborhood putting up Christmas lights. I even enjoy looking at them. I've even posted pictures of the ones I've liked this year. But the government maximizes on this as they ensure that most people have the day off so they can partake in drinking, shopping, putting their money right back into the same system that they just earned it from. And this has been going on since the beginning of time, even in old pagan holidays like Saturnalia. But many people don't question these celebrations or their roots. They don't know the deeper spiritual understanding about them or how they're deliberately set up just in order to pull people in. For example, I think about the colors used at Christmas. Have you ever wondered why they're so red and green? And there does happen to be a lot of green and red, right? Well, the green comes from the evergreen tree, which represents the eternal cycle of things, and evergreens are always green, whereas other trees go into hibernation or look as if they die. The evergreen represents that you're forever caught in a cycle that never stops. There's no rest. You don't get to hibernate like the other trees do, and that's why they use that as a Christmas tree. The red associates back into ancient times with holly berries, which were considered to ward off evil. But when you look at places like Hollywood, it was named for the holly tree because the ancient Druids honored the holly tree for its magic. The prickly-leaved male holly was said to bring masculine rule to the household, which was predominantly used over the feminine aspect of holly leaves. This was symbolic of male dominance. Hollywood was built under this name because of the magic that would go into shaping the entire culture, that would perform in ways that would make a fictional story seem so real, something that would touch your heart or bring you to tears or bring your greatest nightmares to reality. Not only this, but Hollywood is full of illusion, from the glam that it's used to promote commercialized goods and technology that's used to trick people into thinking that something's real in movies, when it's not. It's all the very definition of what sorcery is. Sorcery is the practice of using supernatural powers or magic, often through invocation or control of evil spirits or energy, to influence events, cast spells, or achieve unnatural effects. And well, that's Hollywood for you. The use of energy comes from the use of television, light, film, as well as the projection of the influence of the unnatural setting that surely influences people in reality as they watch. And this is especially true today with the use of AI and Wi-Fi, since both are made out of wireless energy that stream from one place to the other, full of intelligence to give information or create influence, but yet not natural. So it is kind of like sorcery. But let's face it, Hollywood has ruled the scene for a very long time. Even I have to admit it's had its very glamorous days. But going even further, eventually Holly was banned and said to be heathen in regards to Christmas. But when looking at Christ, he's depicted in art wearing a crown of Spina Christi tree, commonly known as Christ's thorn. This too is an evergreen shrub or a small tree native to the east and in East Africa and Mesopotamia. So you see, it's another reference to evergreen. Yet it's pushed upon his head as if he's being crucified, and that's representing everlasting life in a body that is destined to die. Again, another symbol of yin and yang. It's all duality. Holly is similar in the fact it's an evergreen too, and just the same, holly thorns also became a symbol of death and resurrection. Look at the sun in Horus in ancient Egyptian beliefs. Jesus was a figure who was overlapped with the Sol Invictus, the Roman sun god, also known as the unconquered sun, whose birth was celebrated also on December 25th. And in some myths, they said it was Mithras as well. But when Rome took over the rulership of Jerusalem, as well as the teachings of Christ, and then enforced them throughout the world, even to the point of putting people to death to enforce them to worship, Christianity took over and Rome was installed as the home of their religion while they conquered Egypt and Israel, still calling Israel the Holy Land, since many knew that the central figure of the new way was said to have been born there. Israel was actually renamed from its original name, Canaan. Israel is a combo of the names Isis, Ra, and El, which are the gods combined from Egypt, Canaan, and Sumer. It means God wrestles with. Almost cursing land, in a way, to have contention and war from the beginning. And we do see that. The truth is that many religions all point back to the earliest belief systems, which happen to worship the sun. I mean, look at my last video on Christmas from last year where I mentioned the cardinal cross and Jesus, or the sun being hung on it, representing split in dark and night, but the sun forever eternal in rebirth. But wherever there's joy or light, there's darkness as well, just like Jesus' death and resurrection, or how Horus walks across the sky through the day, only to die at night and be reborn the very next morning in ancient Egyptian beliefs. The same applies to traditional holidays also that have the same hidden ancient roots. Yet no one questioned those things, and people were always so ready to go along with these ideas and traditions without really pondering deeper. Many say that they celebrate Christmas for Jesus and that they don't care about any of the other information, but they really should, because so many people who think that they're celebrating baby Jesus' birthday on December 25th are in actuality just worshiping the sun. The Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun, the darkness during winter cannot be overcome, because the sun will always rise again, and the season is to go on with the sun always telling time forever as life goes on into spring, summer, and fall. However, they're also celebrating darkness because December the 25th, the darkest time of the year, represents human life in the cycles of hardship and the small moments of joy. Each figure of light has a hero, and every figure of darkness has its villain. Isn't that so true, even when looking at everyday, ordinary life? How many people in your life have you thought to be the villain? How many things that have caused you bad luck or downfall? How many times have you been the good guy or the villain in your life? If you want, why don't you tell me a story in the comments about how maybe you felt like you were painted as a villain in a situation, or maybe had a person or circumstance that caused you trouble in your life as a symbol of a villain that you've experienced in the darkness. Or maybe you can tell us about how you played a role of a hero or saint. I would so love to hear your stories. But continuing on, take a look at some of the other characters involved at Christmas time stories. Far from a mere myth, Krampus's tale is a labyrinth of pagan rites, a medieval menace and moral fire forged in the crucibles of fear and also faith. The origins of Krampus trace back to the shadowy fringes of pre-Christian Europe. Yep, that's right, it's pre-Christian. And that's before Rome reached the rest of Europe in their attempts to convert the world to the New World Order. Krampus emerged from pagan festivals of the Alpine regions, which spans modern-day Austria, Bavaria, Slovenia, Croatia, Hungary, and northern Italy. Wait a minute, Italy? So it had Roman roots too. No wonder it's lasted as a part of Christmas lore, especially this long. This was over 2 millennia ago, though, and those areas nestled in the rugged Alps were home to Celtic, Germanic, and Norse tribes who celebrated the Winter Solstice with special rites to please the spirits, the elementals, and ancestral spirits of the coming cold and darkness. Krampus, or even figures akin to him, were brought to life representing fertility, chaos, deities embodying the wild, untamed forces of nature that both sustained and threatened life. He, like Baphomet and Pan, were symbols of human desire and the animalistic nature that they carry in their urges of feeding into the senses and pleasuring them. Whether it was through escapism or sex, it represented what made them happiest to indulge in and the instinctive parts of themselves as humans. Krampus draws from a pantheon of horned woodland spirits and underworld guardians. His name derives from Old High German Krampen, meaning claw, evoking the grasping talons of a predatory beast, and some trace him to the Norse goddess Hel, ruler of the underworld, whose son was said to be a clawed demon of winter's wrath. Though this connection is more poetic than provable, I believe. But in broader Indo-European mythology, horned figures like Greek Pan or Celtic Cernunnos represented primal fertility, but could turn vengeful, punishing those who disrespected the land. During the solstice, bonfires and processions, villagers donned massive goat hides and antlers, parading as these beasts to drive out malevolent spirits, and a ritual eerily similar to today's Krampus runs, which costumed revelers chase spectators through the snowy streets. And these pagans and these elements weren't isolated. They happened across Europe in figures that appeared in Saturnalia in Rome and their wild revelers, or the Slavic Badalisk and horned dragon that demanded tribute at midwinter. The Alps, as a cultural crossroads, blended these influences into Proto-Krampus, a chaotic enforcer who embodied the solstice terror, reminding communities that survival depended on harmony together and resilience. Or is that really the truth? Like I said earlier on in the yin yang, there is always dark and light, just like there is a devil and a messiah in Christianity. There is a god of heaven and a god of the underworld in Greek mythology. And so, with this horn figure, it really just represents Earth. The devil is a great opposer because it represents everything that pulls you into bad habits or things that stand in your way of enlightenment. Just like your mind has an area within it that looks like two horns or wings, whichever way you want to look at it, depending on the person's nature, it's called the hippocampus, and it's a curved structure in the temporal lobe named after its shape, which evokes a ram's horn or seahorse. In Latin, it's called the como amonis, or Ammon's horn, drawing from the Egyptian god Amun. And that has ram's horns and a symbol of creation and hidden power. And the name dates back to early anatomists who noted the resemblance to horns of a ram and animals sacred to Amun. Ammon's horn is seen as a divine place for hidden knowledge and occult traditions, and it represents the hidden creator, akin to the god Amun, tying into the brain's potential for unlocking spiritual mysteries and enlightenment, which can be achieved by awakening dormant powers, enhancing paranormal visions, or achieving spiritual freedom. It's often linked to nearby structures like the pineal gland. When decalcified, restores and this access to higher consciousness and the mysterious soul of the universe. That's why I offer a lot of help for unlocking these things, combined with knowledge and energy work over time. Anyhow, this is found on both sides of the brain, activating left and right awakening for those who pursue it. The good who are awakened and enlightened are angels, as they represent angel wings in the mind, the area compared to the two wings to represent the Ammon horns, but in terms of light. The good who are enlightened use their wisdom as messages of higher good. But while depicting it in the darker side of the message, this is an area that one's awakened self who opens up, it goes for self-gain, greed, and pleasure in this area, which is then depicted as horns or some mythical creatures who represent the same. Obey your instinctive call to the flesh and use your wisdom for self-gain only. These are the symbols of the horns, and they are to throw you off in many of these characters. The creators using them did so merely just to hide the fact that you're worshiping yourself and the world around you, which is why most of the elite and the celebrities, as well as so many politicians and many other people of great wealth, do. That's why they're considered to be underground or Luciferian or even satanic, worshiping the horn figure Baphomet and many of these others, because this represents the worship of all things earthly. Since they don't think they'll ever reach a state of true virtue enough to get back to heaven, then why not get the true fulfillment of everything that you can have here in the flesh on earth? And most of them know that they'll incarnate and just come back to this world anyway. And so they do as they please, not worrying about the consequences, because they're not really fearful of them. If they enjoy living life, debauchery, greed, sexual immorality so much, then coming back for another lifetime isn't going to be all that bad for them after all. That also has more truth, but we'll save that for another video on reincarnation. These horned figures have always represented the part of your brain which gets easily caught up in the things that seduce your senses, whatever those things may be for you. And that's why in my teachings I always try to work with my students to get beyond their shadows and desires so that they can finally embrace the light. This way, the world has no control over them, and they have nothing within themselves that can take control over themselves either. It does make a lot of sense, doesn't it? Think about all the holidays, though. Most of them are about big feasts, drinking, liquor, lots of people who are drunk, getting into some kind of an affair with someone while they're intoxicated, giving presents, and spending great amounts of wealth on them. Even today, Christmas gift giving isn't about really what a person simply wants to receive out of love. I've seen so much throughout the years that most people tell everyone what they want, and it doesn't really matter how much it costs or how they have to work hard for it. Their family members will go above and beyond to get it for them just to make them happy, with very little sentimental value, and that's the structure of life today. But I remember as a girl, we would get a pair of ice skates, like a little matching hat or glove set, maybe a sled or a simple baby doll, and we would be just so happy with that, knowing that that was all our parents could afford. But today, with all the commercials and ads that they have for technology, kids are being taught to want the most expensive and craziest things. And this causes parents to work even harder so that they don't let their children down, even if they can't really afford it. But then celebration turns into something much darker, where instead of enjoying the holidays, they're out drinking to merriment. The parents are trying to forget about their troubles. As Christianity spread northward from Roman Empire in the 4th and 8th centuries, these heathen customs didn't vanish. They were absorbed and repurposed, much like Yule logs became Christmas logs. And by the High Middle Ages, roughly maybe about 1000 to 1300 CE, Krampus had fully morphed into a Christianized demon linked to St. Nicholas, the historical bishop whose legend would evolve into Santa Claus. This era marked a pivotal fusion of pagan dread with ecclesiastical authority, as the church sought to convert Alpine folklore by overlaying Christian saints into these local rites. And that's the way you kind of pull everybody in, isn't it? By adopting their ways and joining them to yours. But the earliest documented references to Krampus-like figures appear in the 12th century, Bavarian and Austrian texts, such as monastic records, decrying devil's dances during Nicholas's feast day on December 6th, but his visual archetype crystallized in medieval art and mystery plays, illuminated manuscripts, and church frescoes depicted horned imps with birch switches tormenting sinners, especially while traveling in St. Nicholas's coach in the plays, where a benevolent bishop would arrive flanked by demonic attendants. Here, the devil accompanying Santa in those plays emerges as a core motif. St. Nicholas, canonized around 1087 CE, was already a beloved intercessor for children, sailors, and the poor, thanking them for his gift-giving, dowries, especially to impoverished girls, the origins of secret Christmas presents. But the Alpine traditions, he never traveled alone. Accompanying him was a whole group of infernal sidekicks, little Krampuses, who served as his shadowy enforcers. Oh, and it was Rupert the servant, a soot-blackened beggar devil with a whip, and then Father Whipping Man in France, and the outright demonic Krampus in Germanic lands. And it is a little terrifying. But in these processions, Nicholas was robed in finery, would quiz children on their religious knowledge, and the obedient would receive apples, nuts, and sweets. But the sinful faced the devil's lash or abduction. So you see, even St. Nicholas was given a brood of devils to accompany him on his way, because this was meant to symbolize that no matter how good a person could be, that they would always have temptations and sins following. Wow, what a deeper way to really think about all of this, isn't it? This duality was not accidental. The Middle Ages were a time of intense moral fervor, scarred by the Black Death, peasant revolts, and the church's crackdowns on heresy during the Inquisition. Folklore scholars argue that the devil companion trope arose from the Christian binary of divine mercy versus satanic justice, to program masses. Bishops and priests drawing from biblical precedents like the book of Revelation's fallen angels started to incorporate these figures into their sermons and pageants to vivid effect. A 17th century Austrian woodcut shows Nicholas haloed in gold, dwarfed in a towering Krampus whose chains clank like Jacob Marley's ghosts, and that was a visual reminder that God's grace required fear and damnation. But then again, the little devils were there to represent that it would be very hard to be free of this so-called damnation, because there would always be temptation there to lure someone away from God's grace. Yet, so many people were blinded to this. In some regions, like Slovenia, the devil was Nicholas's chained prisoner, symbolizing Christ's triumph over evil, yet still unleashed to scourge the unrepentant. That's pretty insidious. In my teachings, I tell my students that it's not God that actually punishes them. They punish themselves by not making the right decisions. They punish themselves to the consequences of their own bad choices or through delaying change in areas of their life that truly need it, because what needs changing is actually what's causing the problem. God loves everybody unconditionally and wants everyone to do well. He hurts when people hurt and so these types of teachings about God punishing others really doesn't represent who God really is. Yes, there should be consequence or punishment to wrongdoing, but if the world could be a place where there wasn't so much sin being put in everyone's face all the time, deliberately to lead them towards it, then maybe, just maybe, there would be a less need for punishment or consequence. No? Krampus's antics in this period were gruesomely detailed. He arrived with a cowbell's ominous toll, his breath reeking of brimstone, to stuff gluttonous children into his sack for the one-way trip to the underworld. Folklore from Tyrol describes him boiling the wicked in pots or feeding them to his fellow imps. What elevates Krampus from folklore curiosity to a figure of primal dread is not just his grotesque form, the fanged maw dripping with grossness, eyes glowing like embers in a forge, fur matted with frost of forgotten graves, but it's the intimate, visceral horror of his judgments. Unlike abstract boogeyman, Krampus is personal. He knows your sins, whispered in the confessional or hidden deep within. His punishments are no slap on the wrist. They're spectacles of complete torture and suffering designed to scar the soul. Those birch rods don't merely sting, they flay the flesh, leaving welts that throb all through the night as reminders of gluttony and greed. Worse still is the sack, a yawning abyss of woven rushes, reeking of damp earth and despair, into which he crams the irredeemable. Legends whisper of children awakening in infernal caves, their cries echoing as Krampus devours them limb to limb, or drags them to rivers for watery baptism in perdition. How horrifying for children to be brought into such graphic stories. What could an innocent child possibly do so wrong that they would need to be devoured limb by limb? But this just plays into the worship of flesh, even in how the Catholic churches do something very similar, but in a sexual way to children who are sexually abused. And no doubt there are children who are human trafficked underground for sadistic torture as well too. It's like an ancient power struggle and any eternal representation that all things on earth belong to man, and that they'll do whatever they please. This is very apparent today, especially as we live in a world that really doesn't have a sense of God, although they claim to. Many people say that they believe in God or Jesus, but they really fall short of living to his expectations. They use excuses like Jesus died for their sins to say that they're forgiven and continue to repeat doing the same deeds. But to truly know God, that means that they know that He has unconditional love and that He's all about goodness, which drives out the sin when you want to please Him. Especially driving out sin in the world today, it does nothing but promote it more and more. Especially now, as they do it under the disguise of being Christian and Christian conservative movement that they have trending. I mean, look at them. They're flashy, they're wealthy, they're elite. So many of them, especially the elitists with great wealth who take part in things that the public could never imagine, yet they preach that they believe in good deeds on the outside. This terror is amplified by this timing. The celebration for Krampus falls in the dead of winter, when the veil between worlds thins and isolation breeds paranoia in medieval villages where the child mortality hovered at 50%. Krampus's threat weaponized parental authority, turning holidays into high-stakes morality plays. Think about this. Psychologically, he exploits the uncanny valley, familiar as a goat herder, alien as Lucifer, triggering deep-seated fears of abandonment and the monstrous within. Even today, in Krampus runs, the adrenaline of pursuit evokes hunter and prey instincts, a sanctioned brush that with chaos exercises modern anxieties. Krampus terrifies because he inverts joy where Santa promises endless bounty. Krampus enforces scarcity through suffering, a stark mirror to winter's own merciless call. In his shadow, goodness isn't optional, it's survival. At the heart of this grim theater stands St. Nicholas, the saintly foil to Krampus's depravity. Born around 270 CE, somewhere around modern Turkey, Nicholas was a historical figure. He was a Greek bishop of Myra, renowned for his piety and his miracles, including even some who said he resurrected drowned children, and a slapping heretic at the Council of Nicaea. His feast day, December 6th, aligns serendipitously with Pagan solstice and echoes, making him an ideal vessel for Christianizing winter rites. Nicholas was the epitome of saintly benevolence, a protector of those vulnerable whose anonymous gifts represented humility and charity, core Christian values. But by the 11th century, his relics were venerated across Europe, fueling a cult that positioned him as a children's advocate. Yet, as Nicholas's legend globalized, so did his demonic entourage, though not without pushback. The addition of the devil to Santa's story wasn't the work of a single innovator, but a collective evolution in the Holy Roman Empire's folklore, spearheaded especially by clergy and monastic scribes in the 12th and 13th centuries. Why? It's just crazy. The church faced a rural populace steeped in paganism, outright banning beloved rituals risked rebellion. So officials baptized these pagan rituals, grafting them into theirs, and infernal punishers onto the saint to reinforce moral dualism. This carrot and stick approach, it really rewarded piety and terror for sin and mirrored medieval theology's emphasis on free will and judgment. There are so many different types of traditions that go along with this, but they explicitly framed a demon as a tool of divine correction. And as St. Nicholas morphed into Santa Claus in the Netherlands in the 16th century, and then Santa Claus in the 19th century America, thanks to Clement Clarke Moore's 1823 poem, A Visit from St. Nicholas, and Thomas Nest's illustrations, the devil figure waned in Anglo-American culture. Puritan reformers viewing such popish excesses and idolatrous sanitized Santa into a purely benevolent elf, stripping away the birch and chains. Back in Coca-Cola's 1930s ads, further polished him into a red-suited icon we know, emphasizing consumerism more so over coercion. But in Catholic strongholds like Bavaria, Krampus endured, surviving 20th century Nazi bans who saw him as degenerate, and 1950s Vatican condemnation as being too pagan. In the 21st century, Krampus has roared back, fueled by fascination with dark Christmas amid holiday burnout. Annual Christmas parades for Krampus draw thousands, blending medieval menace with modern satire. Think craft beers and iconic cosplay, but yet this legend persists as a cautionary tale in a world unchecked of indulgence. The Clawed One reminds us that joy's shadow is accountability. From pagan bonfires to medieval altarpieces, Krampus embodies winter's eternal bargain. Be good or face the horns. In a world softened by commercial cheer, if Krampus rattles chains, the guardian of winter comes to wildly bargain with you to see if you've been good. But beneath the twinkling lights of December's darkest days lies of a terror and triumph where ancient gods frolic amid feasts and fiends prowl for the wayward. Saturnalia, the celebration for Rome in midwinter, pulses with the same primal energy that really brought Krampus's rattling chains and forged into the solstice's forge, blending chaos and catharsis and the thin line between indulgence and judgment. While Saturnalia crowned abundance with anarchy, the Alpine and Icelandic Yule wield monstrous enforcers to temper the tide of the mischief. These traditions, separated by mountains and fjords yet united in pagan fervor, reveal how winter's grip inspired humanity to dance with demons, invert the world, bargain with the beasts within, not without. What follows is a shadowed understanding, comparing the beings who haunt these nights and the rites that summon them. Pagan foundations, solstice shadows and seasonal subversion, all three traditions spring from the same frost-hardened soil of pre-Christian Europe, tethered to the winter solstice, the longest night when the sun teeters on oblivion, demanding rituals to coax its return. Saturnalia was celebrated from December 17th to the 23rd in honor of Saturn, the god of sowing, and the Golden Age, and the horned devil as representative was a 7-day eruption of gratitude amid Rome's chill. It echoed earlier Greek Chronia festivals where slaves dined with masters, symbolized a brief return to mythical equality before the hierarchy's yoke tightened. Krampus embodied this dread, his legends woven from Indo-European threads of chaos deities. Krampus clawing from Alpine paganism, Celtic, Germanic, Norse beliefs morphed from a horned woodland spirit and brought Roman fauns and satyrs who converted in Saturnalian processions. These were masked revelers donning goatskins to mock authority and purge winter's ills. New traditions overlap that, and Saturnalia's dates and shared solstice bonfires to honor Thor and Odin, like Saturnalia's temporary world upside down, is something they believed in, inverting norms with petty thefts, licking spoons and slamming doors, that parody of human folly. Well, where Saturnalia reveled in collective liberation, freeing the enslaved from toil for a week of everyone just going into excess, Krampus enforced a sterner pact. The solstice rites weaponized fear. Krampus's birch lashes targeted individual sins, transforming pagan things into personal peril. And this shift reflects Northern Europe's harsher climes where famine loomed larger than Rome's grain silos, turning abundance and its echo into a survivalist snarl. These beings are really so important to the understanding of what all of this represents. Christmas is about dark and light. It's about good and evil. It's about what goes on within you. Because they say, idle minds are left to idle things. And when you're alone and isolated in the winter, you come to that balance within yourself. And when you do, your thoughts come up, boredom comes out, loneliness comes to the surface, and you start coming into these moments of where you start to think about what tempts you the most to get out of those darker feelings and moods that come up. And these were represented and hidden behind all of these holidays, including Christmas itself and the figures that represented it, like Krampus. And that is what all of it was always all about, the good and the bad within yourself. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoy your holiday season. Sorry for all the background noise. I thought it was an interesting subject, a different way to look at it, Krampus is chasing after you with your temptations and your darker thoughts during a time when you're indoors all the time and kind of sitting idle, where Santa makes you think about all the things that you want. And even though that's supposed to be saintly, if you really think about it, it's just enticing you out more to think about your desires. And then Krampus is the representation of those darker desires to get there, like trying to overwork yourself to go get something, and then you're sad, and then you're lonely, and you're feeling like you have to work harder, and now you're out of money. So most people, to them, will go out and drink, or just try to hide the fact that they're really struggling or sad inside, or to think about things that happened over the year that really beat them down. And that in itself takes people to a place where you can go for the cheer and realize that this is an eternal cycle, make the most out of it, or you can continue to have Krampus beating you down in your thoughts, punishing you for things that you have not yet to change. But if not, there's always enlightenment, where you can turn those horns within your brain and the hippocampus into wings and soar off into a place of balance and duality and light. Thank you for watching.